a centurion's hand gripping a vine staff. The sounds of marching feet, clanging steel, and a low, tense drumbeat. Narrator: imagine a man who wakes up knowing that today might be the day a barbarian axe cleaves his skull. A man who stands on the front line, in the most dangerous position, not by birthright, but by merit. He is the literal and figurative backbone of the most successful army in human history. He isn't a general on a distant hill. He is the centurion. And the reason the Roman legion conquered the known world wasn't just their swords or their shields. It was the brutal, unrelenting, and almost inhuman discipline of these men. They forged themselves through a set of habits so cruel, they would break the average person. But for the centurion, these habits didn't break them. They made them unbreakable. Today, we are excavating these lost codes of discipline. These aren't just history lessons, they are a blueprint for absolute mental fortitude. This is the 7 cruel habits of a centurion, and if you can master them, no one will be able to break you ever again. Narrator: the first habit is the darkest, and the most powerful. Every morning, while others prayed for victory, the centurion engaged in what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum the premeditation of evils. He didn't just hope for the best. He lived, in detail, the absolute worst-case scenario. He would visualize the battle line breaking. He'd see his best men fall. He'd feel the phantom pain of a spear in his gut. He would attend his own funeral in his mind, accepting his death as a real. This sounds morbid, but it was a psychological weapon. By confronting the worst possible outcome, he did 2 things. First, he stripped fear of its power. You cannot terrorize a man who has already accepted his own demise. Panic has no hold on him. Second, it made him a master of contingency. When chaos inevitably erupted on the battlefield, he wasn't shocked, he wasn't frozen. He was executing a plan for a disaster he had already rehearsed in his mind a dozen times. So how do we apply this? Before a crucial meeting, don't just visualize success, visualize the technology failing, your key supporter turning on you, the entire deal collapsing. Then, mentally walk through how you will handle it with composure and strength. Before a difficult conversation, imagine it going as badly as it can. Plan your response. By practicing your own funeral, by accepting the worst, you trade anxiety for preparedness. You become the calm center of any storm, because you've already weathered it in your mind. Narrator: the second habit was a constant, grinding reality. Every Roman legionary, from the greenest recruit to the centurion himself, was a beast of burden. Visual: a legionary hoisting a massive pack, his face grimacing with the effort. The pack, known as the Sarcina *, is loaded with rations, tools, a saw, a pickaxe, and personal items. Narrator: they called it Marius's mules. Each man carried over 60 pounds of gear on forced marches that could cover 20 miles a day, in any weather. At the end of that march, they didn't rest, they dug. They built a fortified camp, castra*, every single night. A ditch, a rampart, a palisade. The centurion didn't just oversee this, he enforced it. He knew that comfort was the enemy of readiness. Softness was a disease that could kill an entire army. The constant, chosen hardship did something profound to their minds. It recalibrated their definition of pain. After carrying a sack of stones for 20 miles and then building a fortress with your bare hands, the terror of a charging enemy feels manageable. The exhaustion of battle feels familiar. This is the principle of voluntary hardship. You don't wait for life to test you. You test yourself, every day, on your own terms. So how do we apply this? Wake up and take the cold shower. Don't just go to the gym, do the workout you are dreading the most. Skip a meal and feel the pang of real hunger. When given a choice between the easy path and the hard one, consciously choose the hard one. You don't do this to punish yourself. You do it to build proof that you can withstand pressure. You hunt discomfort so that when involuntary hardship arrives, and it will, it finds you not soft and startled, but hard, calloused, and ready. Narrator: discipline in the Roman legion was not a suggestion. It was a religion, and the centurion was its high priest. The most terrifying habit he practiced was the complete subordination of personal feelings to the mission. Narrator: there is a famous, brutal story of Consul Titus Manlius. He gave a direct order that no Roman was to engage the enemy in single combat. His own son, challenged by an enemy champion, disobeyed. He fought, he won, and he brought the spoils back to his father, expecting praise. Instead, his father had him executed in front of the entire army for a breach of discipline. A centurion understood this cruel logic. He couldn't afford to have favorites. He couldn't let his affection for a soldier cloud his judgment if that soldier was a weak link. Leniency for one man could lead to the death of the other 79 in his century. The mission, the survival of the legion, was the only thing that mattered. His feelings were irrelevant. This is the habit of radical objectivity. How do you apply this today? When you face a critical decision, you must learn to slay your sentimental self. That means having the courage to fire an underperforming employee, even if you like them. It means giving honest, painful feedback to a friend or family member if it's for their own good. It means cutting a business project you love, but that the data proves is failing. It's about making the right decision, not the easy one. It's about serving the goal, not your ego or your comfort. People may call you cold. They may call you ruthless, but the people who depend on you will call you a leader. Narrator: the Roman sword, the gladius asterisk, was not a graceful weapon. It was a short, ugly, utilitarian tool designed for one purpose: efficient killing in close quarters. And a centurion's men were masters of it for one reason: relentless, monotonous, daily practice. Narrator: twice a day, every day. In the blistering sun and the freezing rain. They didn't practice until they got it right. They practiced until they could no longer get it wrong. The centurion understood that in the screaming chaos of battle, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training. There was no room for conscious thought. The lunge, the stab, the block, it all had to be brutal muscle memory. This automaticity freed his mind to focus on the only thing that mattered: commanding his century and exploiting the enemy's weakness. This is the habit of mastering the mundane. In your life, what is your gladius? What is the core skill that determines your success? Writing, coding, selling, speaking? You must forge that blade daily. Don't just work. Isolate the fundamental skill and drill it with merciless repetition. Not for an hour when you feel inspired, but for a scheduled block of time, every single day, whether you want to or not. Write 500 words. Solve one hard coding problem. Make 10 cold calls. Amateurs practice until they get it right. The centurion's creed was to practice until it was impossible to get it wrong. Make excellence your default state, so that when the pressure is on, you don't have to think, you just execute. Narrator: the centurion's symbol of office was the asterisk vitus asterisk, or vine staff. It was not for pointing at maps. It was for beating discipline into the soldiers who faltered. This sounds barbaric, but it was a physical representation of an unyielding truth. The centurion was completely, totally responsible for the performance of his men. Narrator: if a soldier fell asleep on watch, it wasn't just the soldier's failure, it was the centurion's failure for not instilling enough discipline. If his line broke in battle, it was his fault for not training them well enough. There were no excuses. There was no one else to blame. This doctrine of extreme ownership meant that failure was not an option he could afford. The weight of 80 lives was on his shoulders, every second of every day. This immense pressure didn't crush him. It forged him into a diamond. So, how do we apply this crushing weight? Stop blaming. Today. Right now. Your project is behind schedule, it's your fault, not your lazy team's. Your business is failing? It's your fault, not the market's. The deal fell through? It's your fault, not the client's. When you take 100% responsibility for everything in your world, you give up the comfort of being a victim. But you gain something infinitely more valuable: the power to change your reality. You stop making excuses and you start finding solutions. Assume the blame, and you will seize the power. Narrator: where did the centurion fight? Not in a tent in the rear, surrounded by maps and messengers. He fought in the most dangerous position in the entire Roman battle line. Visual: a chaotic battle scene. The camera pushes in to find the centurion in the front rank, on the far right flank, his distinctive helmet plume making him an obvious target. He is actively fighting, parrying a blow, shouting an order. Narrator: the front rank, right-hand side. This was the position of honor, and the position of maximum peril. It was exposed, it was where the fighting was thickest, and it was where he could best inspire his men, not with words, but with his own courage. His men saw him take the same risks they did. They saw him bleed. They would follow a man like that through the gates of Hades itself. He led not by command, but by example. He ate danger for breakfast, so his men would have the courage to fight for lunch. This is the habit of leading from the front. In your world, this means you must be the first to take the risk. When there's a difficult client to call, you make the call. When there's a tedious, horrible task no one wants, you volunteer to do it. When your team has to work late, you don't just stay with them, you leave after them. Never ask someone to do something you are unwilling to do yourself. Your actions are the only orders that truly matter. Eat the danger first, and you will earn a loyalty that fear and money can never buy. Narrator: after a battle, a Roman legion didn't just celebrate its victory or mourn its losses, they analyzed. And the centurion was the chief analyst of his own performance, and he was a brutal critic. Visual: a lone centurion, silhouetted against a sunset over a battlefield. He is replaying the events in his mind. Flashes of the battle, a mistake, a moment of hesitation, a tactical flaw. Narrator: he couldn't afford the luxury of ego. Ego gets you killed. He had to ask the merciless questions. Where did my line almost break? Why did Gaius hesitate? Did my command come a second too late? He would dissect his every decision, searching for the flaw, the weakness, the tiny error that could lead to catastrophe next time. He conducted a ruthless post-mortem on himself, not to wallow in guilt, but to armor himself against future mistakes. Self-pity is a weakness. Brutal self-assessment is a superpower. This is the final, and most difficult habit: judge yourself without mercy. At the end of every day, or every major project, conduct your own after-action report. Don't ask, what did I do well? Start with the hard questions. Where did I fail today? Where was I lazy? Where did my fear or ego make the decision? What is the one thing I must do better tomorrow? Write it down. Face the ugly truth of your own imperfections. This isn't about self-hatred. It is about an unrelenting commitment to self-improvement. By becoming your own harshest critic, you make yourself immune to the criticism of others. You are no longer running from your weaknesses. You are hunting them down and eliminating them, one by one. Narrator: practice your own funeral. Embrace the sack of stones. Slay your sentimental self. Forge your blade daily. Carry the failures of your men. Eat the danger first. And judge yourself without mercy. These are not life hacks. They are a code for living. A cruel code, forged in the blood and iron of the ancient world. They will not make you happy. They will not make you popular, but they will make you strong. They will forge you into something that cannot be easily bent, and cannot be broken. Final shot: a modern person, a CEO, a doctor, an artist, stands calmly in a high-stress situation. Their eyes are calm, focused, and utterly unbreakable. The screen cuts to black. The screen remains black for a beat longer than comfortable. Then, a single, harsh clang of steel rings out. The music returns, but it's deeper, more contemplative. Narrator: but there is a level beyond the habits. The habits are the what, they are the drills, the tactics, the mechanics of mental warfare. But the centurion operated on a higher plane. He understood the why. He lived by two governing principles that powered all 7 habits. Think of it this way: the 7 habits are the legionary's gear, the shield, the sword, the helmet. But the principles, they are the man inside the armor. The first is the armor of the mind. The second is the spear of the will. Master these, and the habits become more than a routine. They become your nature. Narrator: The Emperor Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the greatest student of Stoicism, spent years on the frozen frontiers of Germania, fighting brutal wars, dealing with plagues, and facing constant betrayal. In his tent at night, by the light of a flickering oil lamp, he didn't write battle plans. He wrote to himself. He built what he called his inner citadel. This was a fortress inside his own mind, a place of pure reason and tranquility that no external event, no matter how catastrophic, could ever breach. The death of a child, the treason of a general, the pain of his own illness, they were all storms raging outside the walls. Inside, he remained in command. The centurion, whether he called it that or not, built the same fortress. The habits of practicing his funeral and judging himself without mercy weren't just about preparing for disaster or improving his skills. They were the quarrying of the stone and the mixing of the mortar for this citadel. How do you build yours? You practice what the ancients called the view from above, right now, in your mind. Zoom out, see yourself in the room you're in. Now pull back further. See the building, the street, the city. Pull back until you see the continent, a shape on a swirling blue marble. Go further. See the earth, a tiny speck of dust in the silent, black immensity of the cosmos. Now, from that cosmic vantage point, look back at your problem, the deal that fell through, the insult you suffered, the fear that grips you. See how small it is, how fleeting. The universe does not notice it. In 100 years, no one will remember it. This isn't meant to make you feel insignificant. It's meant to make you feel free. Free from the tyranny of petty emotions and trivial concerns. By regularly taking this view, you starve your ego. You see events not as personal attacks, but as objective data. You build walls inside your mind that are impervious to panic, to insult, and to despair. This is the armor. Narrator, the second principle was action. The Romans had a word for it, virtus. It didn't mean moral virtue. It meant martial excellence, courage, and effective power, demonstrated through deeds, not words. Virtus was the opposite of hesitation. It was the spear point of the will. The centurion's entire existence was an expression of virtus. He embodied it most perfectly in the daily, back-breaking ritual of building the castra. The first, most crucial, and most hated part of this task was digging the perimeter ditch. It was heavy, dirty, exhausting work, and it had to be done first. Before any rest, before any comfort. The centurion knew that the state of the army's will could be measured by how they attacked that ditch. Did they hesitate? Did they complain? Or did they slam their pickaxes into the earth with focused fury? He ensured it was the latter. Attack the ditch became the unspoken law. The hardest thing comes first. This is the principle of proactive aggression against your own weakness. How do we apply this? At the start of your day, identify the one task you are dreading most. The one that makes you uncomfortable. The difficult conversation, the complex report, the blank page. That is your ditch. You do not procrastinate. You do not warm up with easier tasks. You attack it. You attack it first, with everything you have, before the day has a chance to wear you down, before your own mind can invent excuses. This single act changes the entire character of your day. You prove to yourself, with action, that you are in command, not your fear or your laziness. Completing the hardest task first creates a momentum that makes everything else feel easy. You forge your blade by doing the hard reps first. You eat the danger first by tackling the project's most dangerous problem immediately. You embrace the sack of stones by choosing the heaviest lift when your energy is highest. Attack the ditch. Every single day. This is the spear. Narrator, the armor of the mind, the spear of the will. The citadel to protect your focus. The ditch to prove your resolve. These are not 7 habits plus 2 principles. They are a single, unified system of being, an operating system for the human will, written in the language of brutal reality. It is a lonely path. It demands everything and offers no comfort. It will not grant you peace in the conventional sense. It will grant you something far more rare. The unshakable knowledge that whatever the world throws at you, an axe, a betrayal, a market crash, a personal catastrophe, you have built a fortress inside of you that cannot fall, and you hold a spear in your hand that will not break. The drumbeat reaches a crescendo and then abruptly cuts to silence. A final, stark image, the weathered face of a Roman eagle standard. The Aquila, it holds steady against a driving wind. Fade to black, narrator. But what happens when the battle is over, when the centurion returns to the camp, or to the city? What happens when the unbreakable man must live amongst the broken? The habits forge a weapon, the principles provide a target. But the life of the centurion is defined by a third, unspoken element, the burden. The burden of being the rock against which the waves of chaos and weakness crash. The burden of seeing the world not as it is, but as a series of strategic problems to be solved. This is where the code becomes most cruel. Because it isolates you, narrator. To master this code is to accept a certain kind of exile. You will no longer find comfort in complaining with your peers. The petty grievances and excuses that bind most people together will sound like a foreign language to you. You are the standard bearer. And the standard bearer always walks alone. This leads to the final, hidden discipline, one that was never written down, but practiced by every true leader. Narrator. The most infamous form of Roman discipline was decimation. When a cohort showed cowardice, the legion would be forced to conduct a lottery. Every 10th man, friend, brother, veteran would be taken and clubbed to death by the other 9. This wasn't sadism. It was a terrifying, inhuman piece of logic. A lesson written in blood. The legion is a single organism. The failure of a part is the failure of the whole, and the whole is responsible for purging its own weakness. The centurion did not have the luxury of looking away. He wielded this cruel calculus. He understood that to save the 9, the one must sometimes be sacrificed. His personal grief was irrelevant. How do we apply this terrifying principle? We must learn to decimate the weaknesses in our own lives. You have a group of friends, but one of them is dragging you down with their negativity and bad habits. The cruel calculus demands you cut that tie, not out of malice, but to preserve the integrity of your own mission. You have 10 projects, but one is draining all your resources and energy with no hope of success. You do not let sentimentality keep it alive. You execute it, so the other 9 can thrive. This is the hardest form of leadership. It's making the decision that is strategically sound, even if it is emotionally devastating. It is wielding the axe on your own weakest parts, your own failing ventures, your own comfortable illusions, before the world does it for you. Cut to a visual of a map of ancient Germania. 3 golden eagle icons are clustered in a dark forest. Then, a bloody hand slaps down, wiping them off the map. Narrator. But what if the calculus fails? What if, despite all the habits and all the discipline, you face a catastrophe? In 9 AD, in the Teutoburg forest, 3 of Rome's finest legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, were led into an ambush and annihilated. 20,000 men, slaughtered over 3 days. It was a failure so complete, it haunted the Roman psyche for centuries. The Emperor Augustus would reportedly wander the halls of his palace, slamming his head against the wall, screaming, "Give me back my legions," for the centurion who might have, by some miracle, survived that nightmare. The code would face its ultimate test. He wouldn't have the luxury of despair. Despair is a form of self-pity. Habit 7. Judge yourself without mercy demands analysis, not anguish. He would replay every moment, the faulty intelligence, the overconfidence, the breakdown in formation. He would embrace this new, deeper sack of stones, the weight of total defeat. He would practice a new, more profound funeral, not just his own, but the funeral of his entire world. This is the Teutoburg Protocol. When you suffer a catastrophic failure, your business collapses, you get fired, a relationship ends, you do not break, you do not mourn. You excavate. You become an archaeologist of your own disaster. You sift through the wreckage, piece by piece, and you find the lesson. You identify the precise point of failure. You absorb the brutal feedback of reality. And then, You take that knowledge and you begin to forge a new blade, a harder, sharper blade, tempered in the fires of your own destruction. Victors learn little. The survivor of a cataclysm, if he applies the code, learns everything. Narrator. And this is the final truth of the Centurion's code. The discipline was never just for the battle. It was for what came after. The Roman legionary was the most efficient killer in the ancient world. But he was also the most effective builder. When they were not fighting, they were building. Roads, aqueducts, bridges, walls. The very foundations of the world we inhabit. The daily grind of carrying the sack of stones, of attacking the ditch, of forging the blade, it wasn't just to prepare them for the chaos of combat. It was to give them the fortitude for the monotonous, back-breaking, unglamorous work of building something that would last. This is the ultimate purpose of the code. You are not building this inner citadel just to defend yourself. You are building it so you have a steady platform from which to work. You are forging yourself into an unbreakable tool, not for your own sake, but for the sake of what you will build, your family, your business, your art, your legacy. That is your road. Laying each stone perfectly, day after day, whether you feel like it or not, is the final expression of the Centurion's will. The habits are cruel. The principles are hard. The burden is heavy. But the road you build will outlast you forever. The sound of a single, clean hammer strike on stone, it echoes. Fade to black. Video opens with a high-impact, cinematic montage, a close-up of a Roman helmet's weathered metal. A disciplined legion marching in perfect unison.